All right, it's April 22nd, and it's time to go see how the bees are doing. So, in other videos, you've seen a little bit about the greenery has changed from fall to being now just full of green stuff. But that also means that my splits are coming along nicely, so I need to check on them. So, what you're seeing me here do is pull off one whole split. That box has an entire hive of bees in it with a special double screen board underneath. And what I'm going to do is check the hive that's underneath it and see just how they're all going. And I'm basically looking to see if they've got queens, if they're growing. And here is that bottom one, and you can see there's just bees everywhere. This is super healthy. Now, I can say, because I'm recording this afterwards, that this one in particular is going to have some problems with its queen, but it's rebounding and healthy. So this looks good, and so now it's time to feed. So I think this is one of the first times I've ever shown you what it looks like for me to actually feed them. There's nothing magic to it. This is a 1.3 to 1 sugar to water, or water to sugar ratio, so we call this thin syrup. And I just pour it in with a funnel into that black thing you saw in there, and it holds about a gallon. And the bees will eat that in about a week. And I feed them in the beginning, especially when you're making splits, because the bees are having to basically repopulate, rebuild, do all that stuff. So giving them a little bit of food helps them get that job done. The other thing that's going on is there's a difference of forager bees. It may not be there. So I've opened the other hive, and ants. So many ants. And they've taken up residence on top of this fabric cover that I have. And this has happened for weeks now. And what I do, I see them, I panic a little, shake them all off, and get on with it. So here we go with the ants again. So yeah, this is one of those things where you think you're going out to do one thing, and you're like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be quick. I'm going to be efficient. I'm going to be effective. And then something like these little ants are in the way, and you're like, all right, what do I do with any of this? And in particular, this is this is one of the spots. So you have this fabric cover, and on the bottom it's covered in bees, and on the top it's covered with ants. And I want to get the ants off, but I don't want to mess with the bees. And so, what do? If I shake the ants, the bees come off too, and that's not great. If I lay them down, then the ants and the bees will just have a big fight. And the bees are generally pretty passive about it, so they'll get killed. And so I'm thinking, what if I scrape them? But then, it's a soft cloth, so pretty difficult to do. But this is taking all my brain power to be like, what's the best way to deal with the stupid ant problem? And as you can see, scrape a few off, try to gently lay it down. You see some bees popping out from that. Tap this board out so there's no ants in it, and I can use that as a surface for when I go through the rest of the hive here. But yeah, it just messes up the whole thing I'm doing. Now, if you see that blue board in the middle of all those brown boxes, that's the thing that separates the two hives. So while I'm smashing ants here, the 3 boxes beneath that blue line is one hive, and the 2 boxes above it is another hive that I split. So this is a interesting way to do splits, and the little blue line is called a double screen board, and it's just a board that has entrances in it for the bees, and then 2 pieces of screen with a gap in the middle, so the bees can, the heat of the hive beneath can travel up to keep the upper hive warm, but the bees are separated by just enough space that they feel like they're different hives and don't want to fight. So there you go, the ants fighting each other with the bees. So you can see inside, plenty of bees in here, looking really healthy. And this is a split, which means this was supposed to be the weaker hive, but this is the honey super, which means it's full of foragers, which means it is nice and healthy. Now, the foragers can come from anywhere. They can come from all the other hives that I've got right now, and they kind of can fly around indiscriminately. So it may not be the biggest thing, but this is one of the honey frames that they're working on building, and there's the queen. I don't know if you can see her, but she's kind of right towards the middle, parting the crowd a little bit, but there's the queen. And so this is one of those things that I wanted to find because this tells me that the hive is going to be healthy. And since this is a split, they had to hatch this queen and everything else. One of the things I'll be doing is this box is I'll put a queen excluder on and put the queen beneath it so that that top box becomes a honey super. So what you're seeing here is the feeder that was in a large box, much bigger than this feeder is long. So the bees did what they normally do and added comb to it. And in particular, this comb is drone comb, which is a little bit bigger than the other one because drone bees are big fat bees, and they're making drones right now because it's mating season in the spring. The bees mate all the time, but in particular they get their drones going in the spring. So they're making drones every spare spot they can, which includes this. And unfortunately, I can't leave it around because I've got to move these things to their permanent home. So I've got to scrape all this off, and there's larvae in there, and you can see the sort of the white squishy bits in there. Those are all drone larvae that are in there. I don't like having to do that to them. You know, it's not awesome, but got to do it. Can't leave it there because I need to put that feeder back in the appropriate size box to convert it to a honey super, etc., and stop leaving the feeder in the deep box where it should be full of their brood. So I wanted to show you the whole piece, but it's pretty heavy and loose, so you can see all the little pupa in there. So basically what I wound up doing is just chucking it on the ground near the hive so the bees can make their way back in, and that's about it. I'm not sure if that's the best way to deal with this thing, but that's what I decided to do. Now some of this that's still sitting there is like pure white. It's new, it's not full of anything. So this is something I try to hang on to, mostly to like show people, or my kids like to squish it up into little balls, and that's fine. But this is something I try to just shake the bees off of and keep just for fun. And I actually did take this to the Cub Scout group and show them all of these things, and they had a fun time touching all that stuff. But here's more of that drone comb that was off the feeder. I'm just trying to shake the bees off so when I put it down, you know, they're not helpless. Because these aren't forager bees that fly around a lot, these are nurse bees. And they tend not to fly around much yet. That's just not their job. So I try to keep them in there so they can just do their job and nurse stuff and take care of things and not have to be dropped off in the woods and find their way home. So here's a look at what that looks like inside. After I'm done shaking all that stuff off. And you can see the little larva there, the little white larva that they're surrounding and trying to figure out what to do with it. That's what fell out of that comb that I had scraped off. But you can see just bees everywhere. Sometimes they would say that this is boiling over with bees. And it's like, well, how do they even fit in here? There's so many.